So my name is Rebecca Wallace. I am the EdMaps coordinator at the University of Georgia's Bugwood Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. I will be talking today about hammerhead worms. So I'm not an expert. I'll just say that right off the bat. I'm not remotely an expert, but I have been working with an expert, Lee Windsor from the James Cook University in Queensland, Australia. And he has helped me out to create some of these materials. So I'll go over the materials and I'll go over how to encourage people to report them. So there was a news article that came out that mentioned, hey, report these if you find them, but there wasn't kind of any instruction in there about what reporting actually meant. So I'll just go over those kinds of things, how to report, as well as the materials that will be available through our website. And I'll tell you where those are. We haven't put them up yet. So I'll just start sharing my screen here. And I'll show you. So this is the document that Dr. Windsor worked on with me. It's how to identify, very basically, the I don't want to say the most common invasive hammerhead worms, but these are the ones that have the most presence, I guess you could say. So there are 5 listed on here. And I have them called by their scientific names, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce them. But the most common ones we would see in our area would be the 2 long ones, Quents and multilinatum. I said I wasn't going to try to pronounce it, but I guess I am. The vagum is the shortest one, and you'll see that in Florida, so there might be some presence in South Georgia at some point. Let me just pull up one map right here. So iNaturalist does get a number of reports of these. So we'll just go here and pull up some of these maps really quick. And then sorry, I'm gonna, just because this is a long one and not exactly easy for me to spell, show you what these different, there we go. And so this one, so these maps, I mean, they're about what you'd expect maps to be for citizen science data. So this is one that is going to start having probably some presence in North Georgia. This is the most common one you've probably gotten reports about. It's also called instead of just hammerhead worm, it's also called the shovelhead garden worm because it does show up in gardens. The wandering broadhead has been reported in Georgia. Let me see, is this, sorry, I'm just trying to, okay, so it has reached research grade status in here. So a number of people have agreed that that's what this species is. And then this is the other one I mentioned earlier. This is the kind of shorter one. Okay, so it does have a presence it's already been found in Georgia. It's mainly been found a lot in Florida and some other states. And then I don't know if we have, okay, so we have had a couple of reports. Has it been, yeah. Okay, so you might get reports on all of these as it turns out. I hadn't checked these maps in a little while. So I'm glad all of these were included on this. So you're going to potentially see all of these. And this gives you some general idea of where these are kind of, for the most part, found for each one, where they're native to, if we know their nativity, how they got here, where you're generally going to find them. And then these are kind of the 2 important sentences at the end here. They haven't been found to be really kind of anyway devastating. They do eat earthworms and mollusks for the most part, and it kind of depends on which species you're looking at, which exact one tends to favor what type of food source. So if you do have people who maybe have worm bins or really enjoy having, you know, maybe a bait farm, a earthworm bait farm, something like that, then they might want to pay more attention to where these species are being found, and try to, you know, not have them around. But also, in this document, we're telling people to report these through our website. This is where we're trying to direct people to, because it seems that they didn't get enough information out of the article on actually how to report these things. So I'll walk you guys through how to report these things two different ways. To identify these species, we provided the dorsal side, so the back side of what these different species look like, as well as if you print this out on just a piece of paper, it's relatively close to their size. The only one that doesn't get quite to the size is the Cuense, because the paper is not wide enough. But the other ones are relatively close to the actual size of them. As you can see, they have different numbers of stripes. They have different colors of stripes. Some of them have slightly different shaped heads. This graphic in the bottom right gives a close-up kind of, or a larger view of the heads. It also includes some of the back, so it does include those stripes. So you have a better idea of what you're expecting to see with each of these species. The head shape and the stripes are really important indicators of these. On the left here of the head comparison graphic, it tells you with each species, they each have their own little paragraph, what you're expecting to see for each of them, the size of them, the colors of the stripes perhaps, how many stripes. They also include the ventral description. So for some of these, they do have a distinctive ventral side. So there just wasn't enough room on the graph, this flyer or piece of paper, or whatever you want to call it, this handout, to include a ventral side. But you can get an idea from this, okay, this one doesn't have any stripes and it's just kind of pale. This one, so this is the one you guys have probably gotten the most reports of, Cuense. It has two gray-violet stripes on its ventral side, on its belly, and then so forth. So these species reproduce primarily by fragmentation. So if you cut them or on their own, they can pinch off their body, so they become more than one. They can become two. They can, there's a word for it, and I can't remember it, and I don't even know if I'd be able to pronounce it. But it's essentially they can self cut themselves in half, and they can become more than one. That means that people are coming across where a hammerhead worm does not have a head. Because of that, those ventral markings can be quite important to discern if it's say a Cuense versus the bottom one, multilinatum, because the backs can look similar. One thing to note is that these colors and the visibility of these, especially dorsal stripes, vary pretty widely. For some of these, the stripes are very faint, and so you may only see some of these stripes. And it is noted at the bottom here that some of the colors can be kind of different from each other, but we just tried to give you a good idea of what you're very likely to see. In the bottom right, there's a more info section. It does note that two of these species, so the multilinatum and the adventitium, I'm sorry, I'm trying so hard, do contain a toxin, tetrodotoxin. Now, you really only need to worry about this if an animal eats several of these. And that is very, very unlikely. They're not tasting good. They're not going to want, nothing is going to want to really eat these. And it's really, you know, something you'd have to worry about maybe with if you've got a particularly hungry, persistent chickens or something like that. But it's really not as much of a problem. But we did want to note that just in case.
Do have one question that if they get sliced, do they end up developing a head?
Yes, they will. They will develop a head, but there are plenty of photos, especially if you look at iNaturalist, where the observation was of a worm that had not yet developed its head. Some of them you can see actually they're in the process of, you'll see that they've developed a little bit of a neck. So some of these have these kind of black spots, or what is sometimes called a collar near the head. And so you'll see that some of them actually have regained their collar, and they're in the process of regrowing a head. Interesting thing that is something you may come across. The mouth for these, it's similar to other flatworms. It's or at least the flatworms we're familiar with that are invasive. It is in the middle of its body, so you will see where they're kind of wrapped around. The middle part of it's wrapped around maybe an earthworm or something. That's it. That's how it eats. It has the mouth in the middle of the body. So this is the, just kind of, like I said, I'm not going to read through everything about this, but this is, it has been approved by Dr. Windsor as a useful tool in identifying these species. I did also create this PowerPoint. So this gives you, if you did want to give a presentation, this PowerPoint is available for use, and it includes pretty much all of the information from the document. So it has the identifications, and then each slide is its own species, and then at the bottom is that more information section. And again, it goes into how there's really no published documentation that there's a large economic impact except outside of that very narrow area. So this will be available, and I'll show you where these two things will be available. So there are two ways to report these species. And the website is mentioned in this document right here. Go to this website to report. So in the to report this particular species, or sorry, these particular species, in EDMAPS, people will need to have an account. They can then go to report sightings, and in this case, they'll be reporting a wildlife. And we're in Georgia, so I'm going to select Georgia. And this is the wildlife form. So so it asks if are you reporting plant, insect, so forth. This is the wildlife form. It's going to have some fields that are more wildlife specific. In this pest box, you can type hammerhead worm, and it'll come up with the genus. So if you go back here, there are there's 4 species in one genus, and then there's 1 in another. In this case, if you type in hammerhead worms, you can pick the genus level for that, or they can type in the genus name, and it'll come up with all the different options. And I need to fix that because that's not a shovelhead. That's not the right species. Someone gave us the wrong species name for that picture. So I'll fix that after this is over. So say they don't know exactly what species, so we'll just say report this at the genus level. So when a record is verified, the verifier can change the species name. So if they did report it at this species, and you're looking at this graphic and going, okay, well, based on the photo they provided, I think it's this particular species, this QNs. You can change that. Let me go back to the, there's really not much required information through this particular form. So red fields are required. It says so at the top there. It defaults to invasives found. I don't believe anybody would be reporting that they didn't find it. It automatically fills in the current date and time, but that can be changed if they wanted to. They can report that they found it in their yard or garden. And then there's other information. They can say how many they saw. They can say if it was alive or dead. It defaults to unknown. And if they did really want to, they could say how long it was, because we are getting emails or phone calls where people will say, oh, it was a foot long, or it was 6 inches long. So that information can be captured in this particular form. The next piece of required information is state and county. So we chose our state at the beginning. And now we can choose our county. So I'm in Tift County, so I'm just gonna type in Tift, and it zooms into my particular county. They can leave it at that if they want to. They can leave it at this level if they don't want their exact home location noted. If they don't particularly care about that, they can, you know, let me just drop a point, let's say here. Say I was working and I saw it, you know, it had just crawled onto the pavement after a heavy rain. We have had some rain today. They can drop that point there. They can also put in some information about where they saw it, you know, if they saw it in a parking lot, if they saw it at a corner store, if they saw it in an intersection, they can put that information in there. And then this is another field they may find useful. This notes that yes, I am providing an exact location, but I don't necessarily want everyone to know that. Maybe it's useful for the people reviewing the record, maybe it's useful for me as the reporter, but maybe I don't want the entire you know, universe to know where I found this particular species. You can say I want this private. The verifiers will see this information where they found it, because the verifiers, to verify a record, need to know where it was found, because there are some species that are highly habitat specific. So if someone saw a fish and they reported it, but the point was in the middle of a parking lot that was nowhere near water, that would be very suspect. So the verifiers need that information if it's available to them. In this web form, you can add up to 5 images. You would just choose your file. They can add any particular caption, so they could say where it was. They can say what they're taking a picture of. Very simple thing. And then any additional comments can go in the bottom. And if they for some reason saved the specimen, they can say where it was submitted to. And then they would submit the report. And so, like I was saying, all the red fields are required. So there's really only a couple really required fields. So you don't have to fill out everything. Once a record is submitted, then it needs to be reviewed by a verifier. Before it can become public, before it can appear on any maps, it would need to be reviewed by a verifier. I was hoping that some of our county agents or similar people would accept being verifiers for these, just because we have experienced in the past where a record comes into our database and the reporter doesn't get any sort of feedback. So they don't know if what they saw was accurate, they don't know if what they saw was something else, and so they try to follow up with us if a record hasn't gone anywhere after they've reported it. That is something you can talk to me about, you can email me about. I am available to walk people through the review process. It's very simple. It's a very simple process, but it is kind of its own walkthrough. So next, I want to show you what it looks like to report on our app. So I'm going to open up our EdMaps app. This is similar in our website in that to report an observation, you do have to have an account. It's the same account through our website. You don't have to create a whole new account. The app will ask you for your state when you download and open the app for the first time. It will ask you for your state so that it can download the state list. I've already selected Georgia as my state. These species do not appear in the species information section. We have not added them for that purpose because we haven't just added them. And also, more species that go in the species information section make for a bigger app. So we don't have those available for reporting through there. So I'm going to walk you through how to report these species specifically. So you would tap on New Sighting. And right now it just gives you a very basic form because it doesn't know what kind of species you're reporting. So I'm going to tap on Select a Subject. At the bottom, there are several different icons. In this particular instance, you need to tap on the magnifying glass icon on the right. That's our search icon. And what this allows you to do is search our entire database for species to report. These are species outside of the field guide that you can report. I'm just going to type in, sorry. And it'll start auto-suggesting things. And these are the species that are available for reporting. So these are all the species in the app, in the document, as well as at the top is that genus level. So as I mentioned, any of these really are open to be reporting. I'm going to just pick, and you can search by common name as well. It's not just scientific name. So see, you can search by common or scientific name. So let me just type in hammerhead and get rid of the keyboard. And so again, these are the species that have hammerhead as part of their common name. So I'm just going to select this one. And as you can see, some of the optional information below has been added that wasn't present before. Images, you would tap on the image icon. It'll ask you what type of, where you're drawing this image from. I'm not going to select an image. And you can add several pictures as well. It auto fills in the current date that you can tap on that and edit it. Hide exact location, that's that private field from our website. So if you check this, that hides your exact coordinates of where you're reporting from. This phone, this app, is drawing from your current location. It's not looking at where you took a photo. So that needs to be very clear if people are using the app. It's drawing from your exact current location, even if you attach a photo with coordinates are in the EXIF, in the data. The location, so it's starting to kind of zoom in on where I am. But if I tap on this map icon, it pulls up a current map of where it thinks I am. It has a little kind of error circle around me to show kind of where it thinks I am. And I can just tap anywhere and it'll change where the marker is being dropped. This is pretty much what I would recommend for something like the hammerhead worms. There's really not much point to drawing a polygon for these types of species, but I'm going to show you how to do that just in case. So I am using an Android phone. Some of these things will look different on the iPhone version. So I'm going to tap Polygon, and it gives me two options below, a freeform polygon or vertices. If I select freeform, that allows me to just draw a polygon with my finger dragging around on the phone. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to tap vertices, and I'm going to tap where the corners of that polygon should be. If I'm satisfied with this, I can select done, and it'll take me back to the form. I'm going to delete that. I'm just going to drop a point. It just picks the point from where I dropped it before. And then I can select done. So it fills in the latitude and longitude I selected. Time spent in minutes. This is more useful if you're working with volunteers or something similar where you can document those volunteer hours. It just automatically fills into 5 minutes. Infestation status. So I mentioned before that you can note if something was found or not found. In these cases, people are reporting something because they're finding it. It automatically defaults to positives, so there really isn't anything that needs to be done. Infestation. So this is noting how many they saw. They can say one or multiple, or if they know exactly how many they saw, they can fill in a number. And then, was it alive or dead? That's pretty self-explanatory there. Any additional notes they want to say, if they want to say that they, you know, didn't have a head, if it, you know, any kind of notes that may go with this, you know, if their dog was interested in it, I don't know. They can say anything they want there. When the form is filled out, you save it. And I know I'm not including a photo. It does encourage people to include photos. And you see the little pop-up at the bottom, your report is now saved to your upload queue. And now I have a red number 1 next to my upload queue. The reason the reports are saved and not immediately uploaded is because these apps are very often used by people in areas with no cell service. This allows these reports to remain on your phone until you get to cell service or Wi-Fi, and then they can be uploaded. So you can upload several at one time. So once you're in an area where you have service, you can tap your upload queue, as I did, and you can elect to upload these. So you can either press and hold on it, or you can tap the box in the top right. This allows you to select the reports you actually want to upload. So maybe there was 1 or 2 you didn't want to upload yet because you didn't have as much information as you wanted about them. You can select to upload your reports. And then again, in the case of the Android version, it's the middle icon. It's now the up arrow. In this case, this is a fake report. I'm not going to upload it to our database, so I'm going to select the trash icon. That way I don't have to, it doesn't accidentally go in our database if someone says, oh, Rebecca, she knows what she's doing, and uploads it. So those are the 2 main ways to report these. Sorry, I guess my do not disturb isn't working. These are the 2 main ways to report these particular species. I mentioned that these need to be verified, reviewed by a verifier before they become publicly available. We can set up people to be verifiers for very narrow parameters, including just these species, or you know, in a particular geographic area. So if you wanted to be a verifier for things in your county, we can set you up to be verifiers for those particular things. In this case, that's kind of what I wanted to go over. I will show you, so we will make these documents, these things available through our website. So I'll be adding these to the species information section. So it'll go through here. There will be a, let me show you one that actually has some So they will go in, Joe, can you confirm they'll go in this resources section, correct?
We can put them in the resources section. We'll also end up sending the links directly out for the PDC.
Yeah, we will do that as well. They'll go through here. They're going to be hosted on one of our other websites called the Regional IPM Center's Data Resources Database.
Yeah, you'll get it through an email to from your PDC. So
yeah, there we go. So this is where we'll be putting some. This is where they'll be hosted, basically. But yeah, we will be sending out the emails with the links to the documents directly.
So a question for you.
Yes.
Someone's taken the time to report. You got a homeowner that they saw the story on CNN. They're concerned. They contacted the agent. They went through all the effort of doing this. Mm-hmm. What should they expect to happen if they do this? You said a couple times that there hasn't really been documented impact aside from if I was raising earthworms for bait. So what should they expect as a response?
I'm sorry, what do you mean, what should they expect as a response?
Should they expect a group of people to show up at their door ready to go search the property, or? No,
so as I mentioned in talking with the experts and my own kind of research online about these different species, there really isn't a management plan for these. Like with similar species, you can, pour boiling water on them. You can potentially salt them. I would not recommend chopping them up. That does not work. But there isn't any particular, aggressive management campaign for these. The reason we're talking to people about reporting these is for kind of two reasons. One, they've been told to report these, and so it makes sense to provide a place for reporting and give more specific instruction on how to report them. And also, there really just in general hasn't been a lot of research into these. So there is the potential that the data could be used in research, in identifying how these things are spreading, where they're spreading, and it's possible that this data could be used in conjunction with other data down the road, looking at if there are ecological impacts that haven't been thoroughly investigated yet.
Well, to paraphrase Tricia's question, so there have been no gardener farmer complaints. There have been no issues from an agricultural perspective, correct?
These don't attack plants. They eat earthworms and other types of mollusks. So if you're really relying on earthworms for something, it could be a problem if you start seeing a lot of these. That's the only real impact that we're seeing, that we know about, that can kind of happen.
So if I'm doing vermicompost or I'm raising something for, bait, that would be an issue. And E. Leonard was asking, is there no significant ecological impact?
And that's something I don't really know. If you try looking up some of these species in something like Google Scholar or something like that, all I've been really finding is, hey, we found it here. There just doesn't seem to be as much. I mean, some of these species, as I mentioned in here, the native range isn't actually even known. They know they're not native here, but they don't know where they're native to. So the amount of research that's been able to be done is very, very minimal for some of these. So we don't know yet all the potential impacts. And so if we do get these reports in, it could be used to study some of this information, some of these questions that exist. It's possible, I mean, they're finding that some of the invasive worms in like the Great Lakes region are having a large ecological impact, but it has to do with changing some of the natural processes of forests. And that took a long time to really understand. So there is the possibility there could be ecological impacts, but we don't know what they are. And part of that is not having the data.
Other questions for folks? You're welcome to also unmute yourself and ask. Rebecca's pretty friendly.
Okay, Eamon did have, is there room on the flyer for recommendations on what to do with individuals that are found? As you notice, the flyer is pretty packed. And I mean, you can't, I wasn't provided management methods by the expert, so I don't have those. I think what it comes down to is a lot of the things that would kill a regular worm would work. So if they dry out, they do die. If you freeze them, it's possible they'll die. Desiccation is a big thing for them. So unfortunately, I don't know that I have a lot of room for management recommendations. So Tricia, if there is one, is there more than likely multiples? That's probably the case. Again, as it mentions down here in the bottom more info section, they do reproduce asexually. They do come in somehow. So up at the, I think it's in the top, introduced as hitchhikers and soil, potted plants, and so forth. So where you have one, there's probably been more. Just because of, you know, usually you don't find the first one that ever existed in a location. Usually they've been around for a little while. And especially since these things crawl under the ground, and you really only see them if you're either digging in the soil or if it's had a heavy rain and they come to the soil, because like earthworms, they breathe through their skin. And so they need some amount of moisture, but they can't be like saturated in water to breathe. So you will likely see them, you know, if there's one, there's likely more than one. And again, especially since they can reproduce asexually, you know, if they want to, they can make many more of themselves.
Other questions from folks?
And if you're more comfortable, you can turn on your mic and ask a question. We're not inundated with people, so you're not probably going to talk over each other.
I think one of the issues that's happening with this is it got highlighted through some fairly high-profile stories. Because there haven't been that many places where someone's actually documented an impact, there hasn't been research on the best methods for management.
Yeah.
So there's a large vacuum of knowledge. There's just not a whole lot of knowledge out there.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I was just going to say, getting the document reviewed and getting expert participation in it. The first guy I was kind of hinted at to talk to, as it turns out, this isn't his particular area, and at the time he was on a boat. He was on a cruise in the Antarctic. So not like a pleasure cruise. He's a researcher for marine invertebrates. So this wasn't his particular area, but I was able to contact the expert in Australia. The other expert that I have found is in France, and the two of them have co-authored a lot of papers together. And so there's really a very small community for hammerhead worm experts that I'm finding. So it's one of those things that, you know, it came in the news and it was like, oh, this is not going to be the easiest thing to provide the information for. So we did kind of the best we could with regards to having a presence and providing information. That's why we wanted to have this conversation with our county agents, since we knew that if we were getting inundated with phone calls and emails and so forth, that our county agents were also likely getting this. One thing I didn't specifically mention, but so you can report through the website. You don't have, if they send you the location, the images, you can report on their behalf. The report does not have to come from the person who physically saw it. So if it's easier, especially if you have some elderly people who are finding these things and they're not very comfortable with computers, you can report on their behalf. And Eamon said he's done that. He's done that already for some people he's been contacted by. So any other questions? Like I said, I am recording this. We will post it and make it available. That link might go out in the email with the where these resources, these documents, the document and the PowerPoint are, to kind of have it all packaged together. So if anybody wasn't able to attend this, they can review this video to see how to report, and also see the resources that will be available. So, all right, I think we're good. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions, let me just pull up so you can see my email address. If you have any questions, you can email me, and I'll answer as best I can. And it can be anything from these particular resources to how to use EdMaps, how to be a verifier. As I mentioned, being a verifier is reviewing records is not difficult. It's a very easy process. So I would definitely recommend that. This is a path that some of you may find very useful, especially if you do get a lot of emails from the public about one thing or another. I know another thing that's been kind of going through, especially gardens, in the last few years has been rose rosette disease. We have reporting for rose rosette disease in EdMap, so that is a venue through which reports for some things like that can go. So, all right, well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope this has helped you with your emails and your phone calls you're getting. So, thank you very much for coming.